Welcome to the Point of Difference Rugby League podcast. I'm your host Dave, and today we're going grassroots. That's right, I'm very privileged to have the CEO of Canterbury Rugby League here on the podcast with me. He's also a grand final winner for the Halswell Hornets back in the day. It's the one and only Malcolm Humm. How are you, man?
Bloody good, and thank you for having me here today. It's great to be here.
Oh, mate, it's so good to have you on the couch. You know, I've actually really enjoyed getting to know you over the years since you sort of discovered what I'm doing with my little podcast. And I just want to say thanks for taking an interest in what I've been doing and inviting me along to a few bits and pieces through the year. It's been great.
No, and thank you. I think what Point of Difference has done is really filled a gap that was there in terms of, and part of what Canterbury Rugby League are trying to do is connect with our past and acknowledge our past. So it's been really great to see. So thank you.
You're welcome, man. It's just been heaps of fun for me personally. So before we do a bit of a season review in the Canterbury Rugby League competition, you know, it's about time we all got to know a little bit more about Malcolm Humm and do a little mini back in the day from your playing career. Join the dots that led you to being our current CEO of the competition here in Canterbury. So my first question for you is, when you were first introduced to rugby league, like when did it happen? Because I hear you were a bit of a soccer boy growing up.
Yeah, I did. I came through the Christchurch United system actually, and it was a pretty formidable system at the time too, with the likes of the Steve Sumners, Bobby Armonds, and so forth. But in all honesty, I got sent off for my glass game for soccer. I was a goalkeeper, and I think I got a bit cheeky with the referee, and I got the red card, and that was the end of the season for us. So
yep.
I was at Hamilton High School, and there was a lot of good rugby league players there. A lot of them were my friends.
Yeah.
And as you do over the summer, you discuss what you're going to do in the next winter. And I got pulled into rugby league, and never looked back. To be honest, it was, I was fascinated about it. I really enjoyed it, and bloody good people.
Yeah.
I was introduced to what I felt was a really friendly club and welcoming club in Halswell.
Yes.
As I say, I never looked back. I met a lot of good people that are still really good friends now.
Yeah. Oh, that's fantastic. So I assume you were a bit of an outside back coming through as a young fella? You know?
Yeah, funny that. I was a bit of everything, I think.
Yeah.
I was a skinny little bugger, so there was nothing of me. So I played anywhere from halfback, standoff, and then on the wing and fullback as well.
Okay.
Through the grades. But it was interesting, you know, in those younger grades I'd played predominantly halfback and standoff. So I played, I was marking the likes of the Brendan Tudors, the Phil Bancrofts and so forth. So
wow.
I knew I was going to come out of every game pretty sore.
Yep. Yeah. Brendan Tudor told me that he played halfback, but he was an up-the-guts halfback. Didn't really have much of a kicking game or anything. It was just an extra forward.
He was a pretty bloody handy halfback. Don't worry about that.
Oh, that's brilliant. So you actually had your first grand final for the Halswell Hornets under-19 side, where you said you came up against a few legends, namely Brendan Tudor, Brent Todd, Adrian Shelford, Mike Doreen, and you were massive underdogs that season, beating Hornby in the semi-final and knocking over Linwood, who hadn't been beaten in 4 years. So, what are your memories of playing in those big games back in those days?
Look, that was fascinating, and we were the underdogs, but we had the likes of players like Glenn Grew, who was incredible tackler, but also an attacker as well. Andy Moore. We had a sensational team, but we were certainly the underdogs. We were playing against Hornby teams that had the likes of the Brendans, the Marty Krugers, the Adrian Shelfords. You know, these teams were stacked. Brent Todd was playing for Linwood at the time. So, but it seemed to be a theme because we won that grand final, and I think we won that in the last minute as well. Won three grand finals in the last minute. So. That was really enjoyable time. 19s was a really strong grade. Yeah. A really strong grade. And that was the time they were picking 19-year-old Canterbury teams, junior Kiwis teams and so forth. So, we were the massive underdog going in that game, but won in the last minute or so. So it really, and once again, still friends with a lot of that team now.
That's so cool. I mean, you're right. I mean, that is that age where like these kids are starting to grow into their bodies and become men, and like you see 18-year-olds in the NRL now, like that's crazy. So the talent's definitely rising to the top when you get to that age, being picked for prems and things like that too.
Yeah, most definitely, and it was fascinating actually moving on, because some of those players, the likes of the Adrian Shelfords, were being picked for Kiwi teams out of club competitions,
That's
which
amazing.
you wouldn't even think of these days. Yeah,
no, you wouldn't hear of that now.
It was a great experience, both on the field and off the field. Because as an example, I guess Phil Bancroft playing for Addington, they were strong as well.
Yeah.
And, I used to play cricket with Phil at school.
Yeah.
We'd play a bit of rugby together at school. He'd play soccer. We used to play a bit of football for school as well together. But then on the Saturdays, we'd be playing against each other. So that was the type of, I guess, community we had at the time.
Oh, bloody fantastic. Yeah, really good times, when, away from all the technology of the world we have now, where people got out and mixed and mingled playing sport.
Most definitely, yeah. And multiple sports, yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, very much a Kiwi tradition. So, fast forwarding to 1985, you played Prems for the Hornets. Here's your playing jersey. How good is that? As a nippy 72 kg, 20-year-old winger, leading you to play in the first ever grand final for Halswell. So, how did you deal with the nerves and the hype going into the massive game, especially after an apparent Kevin Williams pre-match speech?
Yeah, I was sick. I was sick. First of all, I was fortunate. I think I got in late through an injury to Neil Sinclair Rabbit.
Okay.
He was a late default. So one thing I was fortunate. Next thing I was friggin' nervous. I was physically vomiting. And thirdly, Humm, great man he was. Just his. And only the players that were in the changing room that day would know, that type of speech from him. We were up against it. We were up against the Kiwi front row. We were up against a team of champions. And I won't go into detail, but what I can tell you is I knew there was going to be a punch-up in the first scrum.
There always is.
And, part of Humm's strategy was always to, if they were going to be more skillful, or they were the champion team, so to speak, well, we need to put them off their game.
Right.
And that was the strategy. All I was hoping for was that first scrum wasn't on my side of the field. I remember standing on where the Hornby supporters used to sit, and I was on that side of the field, and that's all I was concerned about. Was I hope the scrum is not on my side of the field. And the scrum was on my side of the field. I stayed well clear of it. The fight eventuated, and look, it was just the match went really quickly. And obviously, Banky kicked the field goal in the last bit, but sensational. Led by Phil Prescott. Sensational leader on the field and off the field. But once again, some really awesome players in their likes of the Denny Prendevilles, Don Swansons, Bankies and Jeff Whitakers and so forth. We were stacked with really good men and good players as well, Yeah,
it's pretty amazing, How good is it to win that first premiership, the first one?
Yeah, look, to be honest, I felt like a bit of a fraud.
Really?
Because, there'd been men in that club that had played since the club had started almost.
Yeah.
And they'd been fighting for this for a long time, and I came sort of in late piece. So, and I'm thinking about the Phil Prescotts, the Colin Tennants and so forth. It sounds terrible, but it probably meant a hell of a lot more for them because they had fought to actually get to premiership and then to win.
Yeah.
I'd come in sort of late. So, but look, I certainly learnt afterwards how important it was, and I've probably learnt more since that game about how important it was, than I did actually going into it. I was more bloody frightened going into it, mate.
Oh, I love that. Your biggest memory, I was scared shitless.
Yeah, I was scared shitless, mate.
Right, 1987, Halswell made another grand final against the old foe Hornby. It was Bancroft again, broke the hearts with another field goal, 15-14 victory. Again, did it feel more special this time, for you?
Oh, most definitely. And, Humm had gone by the by, and Phil Prescott had transitioned from being, captain to coach,
Yes.
and brought quite a different approach, especially in terms of strategy.
Okay.
And I learnt more about Phil probably later on when I had some involvement with the Bulls around his strategic approach to how to win. Smart man. But yeah, it was definitely more special. Once again, I think in that 87 game, that was the Kiwi front row of Ross Taylor, Wayne Wallace, and Adrian Shelford.
Shelford,
So,
yeah.
So it sort of said a lot for our forward pack.
Yeah.
They outmuscled them and we got on top of them. And, once again, a tight game. But for myself personally, a hell of a lot more confident. Phil had brought me through and given me some work-ons. I went back to fullback, which became my natural position.
Okay.
So I felt a lot more comfortable back there and was actually, to be honest, oozing with confidence going in that game. Quite different experiences.
Yeah. So did you score quite a few tries as a fullback? What was your style as a player?
I don't know if I had a style, mate. I just, I guess I could run. And it was probably the only, one of the advantages I had was I was quick. So,
okay.
I like to spot a gap and I was more, just a supporting player.
Yeah.
Looking for, forwards making breaks or so forth. That's probably more my bit, yeah.
Nice. Very nice indeed. Okay, so 1988, Halswell made the final again, winning the grand final against Marist, but you were injured for this match, but you were sort of pushing to maybe make that final. Like, how close were you to getting selected for that match?
I reckon, I've thought about it. I reckon I was about a minute away from being in it.
Really?
Yeah, I'd done an AC joint in my shoulder, and Phil Prescott was the coach at the time, and he basically gave me up to the captain's run the day before the game to make the team.
Okay.
And I was still in a bit of pain. I'd had a couple of injections and so forth, and I thought I was okay. But we had the captain's run, and I was walking off the field. I thought, oh, God, I'm in.
Yeah.
And then I heard Phil's voice, Hummy, and he called me over, and he lined up a guy by the name of Paul Crichton. Paul had come from Papanui to Halswell. He's a prop, and he was a quick prop. He was fast. Okay. He was powerful. So my challenge was to tackle Paul Crichton at full pace with. And Paul ran at me, and I think I felt the pain before he even hit me. So I was sitting in the stands the next day. But look, once again, credit to Phil. He gave me as much time as he could, and unfortunately didn't make it. But once again, a really good win by the fellas against Marist. That was probably. Yeah, it was probably one of the easier grand finals, I think.
Yeah. Do you feel like still part of the team though? Is that because you've been there all year to get your side to the grand final? Like, do you feel like you're still part of it when you miss out due to injury or whatever? Yeah,
it was an interesting feeling because people say you're still part of the team, but for me, you're not part of the team unless you're on that field, mate.
Yeah.
And that was me. So. But don't worry, I enjoyed the celebrations that went along with all that.
That's the one. Yeah, I bet there was a couple of days worth of celebrating. So after your time at Halswell, you actually up and moved across the ditch to Australia, landing in Melbourne, playing for the Coburg Lions. So just who are the Lions, and what was the motive behind this big change moving overseas?
Yeah, look, it was the building boom was happening in Melbourne at the time. It was massive.
Okay.
I had a lot of friends moving over to Australia at that time, probably not too dissimilar to now, but there was a lot going on over there. I sort of was going from job to job in Christchurch with no real structure to my life, to be honest. So I felt there was an opportunity to get over there, maybe make some dollars and play a bit of footy. What I didn't realise was, the level of footy at the time was actually okay. There was a lot of Kiwis over there, from around New Zealand, hitting Melbourne, and so this competition sort of blossomed, just out of organically, I guess, and it was. I landed in a place called Coburg. I had some friends that lived there. One of them I played in the 19-year-old grand final, in Christchurch. So Andy Moore. So he was living there at the time. So I ended up living with Andy and another guy by the name of Kevin Rickaby, who was a handy boxer and also and also played footy. So they were with this Coburg Lions team. So I just went along to practice and for a few times and really enjoyed it there.
Yeah.
And yeah, there's about 5 or 6 of us living in Christchurch now that were part of that team that went on to win grand finals as well. And so one of them's Grant Bond, who was the president of Papanui. Glenn Gibb.
Glenn Gibb, yeah.
Glenn Gibb.
Yeah.
So, Gibby, it was fascinating actually. Gibby was 85 Kiwi.
Yeah.
He was the last Kiwi actually pulled out of the West Coast competition to play for the Kiwis. So 85 Kiwi, and here he is in Melbourne playing for Coburg Lions.
What are the chances?
So, it was once again, I feel very fortunate because where I've sort of landed, I've been around these really, cool men.
Yeah.
Good people, really good people, that you sort of take you under their wing and are there to look after you. So similar to Halswell back in the day. So Coburg was fascinating times. Yeah, we had a lot of fun. We were all working bloody hard because there was a lot of work going on. But we played some really good footy.
Yeah.
So. And once again, we're still friends with a lot of those people today, and I think we're going to Magic Round next year together. So,
how good is that?
So it's about 8 of us from that Coburg Lions team going to the Magic Round.
That's amazing.
So, we're talking 30 years or whatever onwards. We're still,
That's so cool, man.
And I think that says something for rugby league.
Yeah, I think it does,
It says something for rugby league.
Yeah, everyone I come across, no matter what culture, whatever, we all just love the game. We're all good people. Like, it just feels like we're all rugby league people.
Yeah.
And you all get each other,
Most definitely, I think. We've all got that sort of common bond, and that, there's a few more leagueies now, though, so...
Yeah. So you said you played some good footy over there, and you did because you got selected to play for Victoria. If you'd hold up this jersey against South Australia in the curtain raiser to the Kiwis versus Kangaroos match, where the Kiwis upset Australia, the famous Dean Lonergan, match where he fell over, got up, carried on to play and win. And this is your playing jersey, playing for Victoria. I mean, how amazing was that?
Yeah, that was, mate, because it was Melbourne. And rugby league wasn't known really in Melbourne. So in that Test match got a good crowd, and actually we got a really good opportunity to mingle with some of the Australian players because they weren't being swamped, but no one knew who some of them were. So for some of us that were in the league community, we really got some good access to them. But there was a great opportunity, just an experience,
Yeah.
Once again, a fascinating experience to be able to play on that ground, play in front of a good crowd before the Kiwis and for the Kiwis to win that night. And to be honest, some of us didn't even... I can't remember who the coach was. I'm not sure who the coach was at the time, but, there were some new players in there. Yeah. I remember Richie Blackmore, Tony Iro might have been in there.
There was Clayton... Oh, no, Clayton Freeman would have come on a bit earlier, but Jared McCracken... He had a great game. He scored a try. I think he was on debut as well.
And we didn't know who some of these people were.
It's crazy.
It was crazy.
Yeah.
And they just blitzed them. And I think, for the likes of Dale Shearer and Wally, that was their last Test match, I think. They just blitzed them.
It was unbelievable.
It was fascinating.
Yeah. Brent Todd was in that match, old mate. And he had a stormer of a game up front.
He did, It was just a great watch. It was just a great night.
Yeah.
It was awesome.
It was fantastic, wasn't it? Oh, that's awesome, man. What a night. So you returned to New Zealand and moved down to Otago to complete a physical education degree. So what was the thought process behind, moving back? And did you play any footy while you were down in Otago? Or was this the end of the road for the footy career?
Yeah, look, what brought on the change? I think once again I'd been in Melbourne 3 years, worked my arse off, probably spent most of my money on partying. As you do. I had a really good time over there, but once again, I probably felt I lacked some direction.
Okay.
And I started thinking about, geez, what do you want to be doing when you're 40 and 50, Malcolm? And do you still want to be digging trenches? And not there's anything wrong with that, but I was finding it hard then. So what was I going to find it like in a few years' time? So I'd always been passionate about sport. I love sport. It was around a time when the Australian Institute of Sport was starting up, really cranking up.
Okay.
And I think I was just lying in bed one night. I was thinking, "Fuck, I'm going to go to university. I'm going to try and get into that sort of system."
Yeah.
This is a guy that left school when he was 15 with nothing. So it was a pretty big ballsy step at the time.
I bet.
I had to apply to get in. I had to go through another avenue because I'd done shit at school.
Yep.
But yeah, went down to Dunedin, did 4 years down there, and I was a bit older, so I was 29 when I started university. So I just put head down and worked bloody hard down there. I put myself out there in a few different roles. One of them was with Otago Rugby League.
Yeah.
I worked for a guy by the name of Matt Blair, who at the time was the head trainer with the Otago Highlanders, and that was when rugby was big down there. They were going good. And I learnt a lot from Matt as well. So yeah, I guess I put myself into some of these situations all as a volunteer, and I remember some of my younger sort of varsity friends or whatever they were saying, "What the hell are you doing that for free?" You know. And before I knew it, I was working at University of Canterbury Sports Science Centre and working with Olympians and Paralympians, and I couldn't have written it any better.
Yeah. Well, as you said, you secured a sports science role with University of Canterbury. You delivered physiology, strength, and conditioning to Olympians.
Yeah.
So and you also did with the footy players, like with the Canterbury Bulls. So take us through that journey, what the experiences were, and when you did team up with Phil Prescott with the Canterbury Bulls.
Yeah, look, it was, as I say, it was, I couldn't have written it any better, but I started there and was I've been very fortunate with a lot of timing, I think, in my life. But
timing's everything sometimes.
Yeah, I started there, and it was just, there was a new sports system being put in place by government. It's now called High Performance Sport New Zealand. Before it was called New Zealand Academy of Sport. And although the New Zealand Academy of Sport office was based in Dunedin, the majority of the Olympic and Paralympic athletes were in Christchurch at the time. Remembering this is pre-earthquake, so there was a lot going on. And so the Sports Science Centre I was working at, which was at University of Canterbury, was contracted to deliver services to Olympic and Paralympic athletes. Okay. So my first experience was working into the Athens 2004 Athens Olympics and Paralympics, predominantly working with basketballers, rowers, a number of rowers, and Paralympians as well. So predominantly the New Zealand wheelchair rugby team, which is the Wheel Blacks, who actually went on to win gold in Athens from a ranking of 6th. I've actually got a 20-year reunion with them next weekend in Auckland.
Fantastic.
Yeah, so that was, the Athens piece was first, and then we got through Athens and more money started getting pumped into the academies, so we were getting more work. And Canterbury Rugby League came to the university wanting some strength and conditioning services. Right. So Phil and myself back together again.
Yeah, what a full circle moment.
Yeah, it was a full circle from him, from playing with him in one grand final, from him coaching me in another grand final. But now we're working with the Bulls together.
How good's that?
It was a time I really got a good understanding of his coaching philosophy, and his values, and his strategic mindset. I think personally, he was underrated by many as a coach in New Zealand.
Yep.
But look, it was fascinating to work with him, and you'll probably know this better than me because I know you know dates of grand final wins and all the rest of it. But to win that Bartercard Cup, with Phil, was nothing short of sensational. He had a clear vision of how he wanted that team to be in terms of their fitness and strength. Yep. They were never going to be as big. I think most of the players, apologies to any for this, but I think they're all about 5'4" and about this wide. But they were just strong and fast and fit. Yeah. And I think if you looked at that team and looked at how many games they won in the last 20 minutes, it would have been a majority. So that was once again a great learning for me. Learning in the rugby league model, so to speak, because that team It wasn't, although they played on the weekend, they trained together during the week because it was quite a different system. They were together all the time.
Right.
They weren't really playing for their clubs as such.
Yeah.
So a fascinating time to have the opportunity to come into that system under a coach and leader such as Phil and be part of that experience.
So what would have been some of the things you did, with your role with the side, in terms of rugby league? What would you have done to help the team with their performance?
So I was with them two to three times a week with their strength and conditioning. So we run outside sessions, and that was predominantly around aerobic, aerobic fitness, anaerobic fitness. Yes, rugby league specific sort of conditioning sessions, and then in the gym, just getting them strong, getting them powerful.
Yeah.
So that was that was my job.
Sweet.
And so you can.
You loved it.
Fucking loved it. I was in the element.
Absolutely.
And University of Canterbury, they sent me over to the Broncos.
Yeah.
So they sent me over there with their strength and conditioner, Baker. I forget his first name, Dan Baker. So Dan Baker was the man at the time in terms of strength and conditioning in the NRL. So I spent a week with him. Did the Australian Strength and Conditioning Association Level 3 course with him as well. Mm-hmm. So I just got I got another opportunity.
So cool.
It was fascinating. So my role was to make sure they were fit and they were strong, and they were really, I guess, outlasting their opposition, which they did on most occasions.
Yeah, I mean that's it. It's an 80-minute game. You win it in the last minute if you have to.
Yeah.
That's what it's all about.
And the fascinating thing is, I still see some of those players now. I see Donnie Aiken in the gym regularly, and it's there's still something there.
Yeah,
it's very cool.
It's a good man, Donnie.
Yeah.
So moving on, you went on to become the Paralympics High Performance Director for 18 years, leading you to go to 4 Olympic Games, including Beijing, London, Rio, and Tokyo. So how incredible was it to be able to see some incredible parts of the world while doing something you absolutely love? Yeah,
it was the dream had come true, because I'd always wanted to go to an Olympics or Paralympic Games. That was really my vision when I went to university. That was my ultimate. So having come with the having worked for the university, I then transitioned to New Zealand Academy of Sport, because most of my work was doing their work. But then I was only with New Zealand Academy of Sport for a year, because all the work I was doing for them was with Paralympics. Okay. So it was just an easy transition. I think the two CEOs had a conversation, and I was told I was changing jobs. So it was as easy as that. So it was fascinating. I was the first full-time high performance director with Paralympics New Zealand. Really? I went in, I had no staff. Okay. I think they basically booked me a one-way ticket overseas and said, "We need you to do this, this, and this." And I was travelling Europe, and I was getting phone calls, and they were saying, "Can you go to this place? We need to look at this for a base." It was just like, is this my life? Am I loving this? It was fascinating. I have to say though, it was lonely at times, because I was by myself a lot of the time. Right. And I had 2 young daughters at the time as well, who were pretty open about missing their dad a lot. Right. Okay. So it was fascinating, and I was able to do a lot of the planning and the build up to Beijing Paralympic Games, and we came out of that games, and I guess I was given the autonomy to develop a plan. There wasn't a lot of exposure around Paralympic sport at that time. Okay. And the big question was, we had at that time we had some ageing athletes, and the prospects weren't looking great for London. Okay. So they said, "Give us a plan. What are we going to do for the future?" So I guess myself and one of my colleagues developed a plan that we needed to advertise for athletes that had disabilities that didn't know about Paralympic sport. Really? So we did this through newspapers and radios. Okay. We went to Spark at the time. It's now Sport New Zealand. I think we asked for 250K, and my CEO said to me, "What are you doing? You're dreaming." And 6 weeks later, we had 250K. Wow. And we had to go find some athletes. One of those athletes was at the Paralympic Games, just medalled at the Paralympic Games just a few a few
Amazing.
days ago. Holly
Amazing.
Robinson in the shot put.
Excellent.
So, and she came from Hokitika. Fascinating. Got an opportunity to, once again, as I say, live my dream, but, you know, be part of that planning team and that operational team in each of those games. I didn't actually go to Tokyo because it was delayed, and by that time I changed jobs.
Okay. Yeah. Yes. Oh, COVID.
Yeah.
That ruined a lot of stuff. So what was like kind of your daily life, you know, as the sports performance director? Like, what was some of the things you had to do in your daily, you know, walk of life?
Yeah. So, bloody good question. Look, a big part of it was working with High Performance Sport New Zealand. We were getting funding, which is taxpayer money.
Okay.
You know, through High Performance Sport New Zealand. So, you know, high levels of accountability about how you're spending.
Yes.
And at that time, a high, you know, there was high expectation that there would be a return on investment.
Okay.
So we were getting invested on medals delivered. It was as simple as that at the time.
Okay.
And actually, when I started, that was what it was for the Olympics. For the Paralympics, it was return on investment was around gold medals.
Really?
Yeah.
Far out.
Yeah. So
Pressure.
You know, it was pressure. It was a pressure cooker environment.
Yeah.
And, you know, we were supported well in terms of investment, so I was able to go out and build a team.
Okay.
So recruited what I would call a bloody high quality team, and that was coaches, performance analysis, medical teams, and so forth. And worked closely with High Performance Sport New Zealand around that as well, because they were able to share some of their staff with us as well. But felt once again, the vision was, I'd been to Paralympic Games, I'd been to World Championships, World Cups, and New Zealand were the team that was always going to beg and borrow and wanting to get something from someone for nothing.
Okay.
We always needed something. And I remember it was post-Beijing, but not long after, and I thought, I want to be that country where everybody's coming to us.
Yeah.
That they want to know what we're doing.
Okay.
And I'd say by the time 2016 came and we won 21 medals.
Wow.
At the Paralympic Games, I think that's New Zealand's highest medal count, and we were number one in the world per capita for both gold and all medals. We had achieved that. We had people knocking on the door. I was able to recruit a guy by the name of Brendan Cameron, who had been Sarah Ulmer's coach.
Oh, wow.
For her gold medal, and is still, you know, I think they're married now, but I recruited Brendan, a guy by the name of Graham Moore, who'd been high performance director with Welsh Rugby. You know, we had people knocking on our door saying, how can we be part of your program?
Okay.
Previous to this, I'd had real trouble getting people to be part of a Paralympic program.
Yeah.
Oh, not sure about that. So we really flipped the coin basically.
Okay.
And it was fascinating. You know, once again, fortunate to work, because for me, I was bringing on really good people so I could learn from them.
Okay.
You know, I wasn't there to tell them what to do.
No.
They were coming on with the skill sets.
Okay.
They were coming on with the knowledge. But for me, it was around, geez, how can I learn from them? What can I take away from this experience? So
amazing.
Really fortunate to be able to build that team. So that's really, build the team, set the strategic plan, ensure we were delivering on that strategic plan, and then being the interface with High Performance Sport New Zealand, ensuring we were really open and transparent with them in terms of, you know, where we were at in terms of our tracking.
Yeah.
Because that was always the question we were having on a sort of a 6-month basis. How are your athletes tracking?
Right.
How are your athletes tracking? How are your athletes tracking? So hence why we had a really sharp performance analysis person who always had that data for us. Yeah.
It's amazing.
So we weren't just tracking us, we were tracking the rest of the world as well.
Far out.
Yeah.
Who knew it was such a massive operation? I had no idea.
Yeah, look, I could talk for hours on it, mate, because it's very strategic Paralympic sport. You know, you can manufacture medals. And that's what I loved about it.
Okay.
You can manufacture medals. And I mean that in a
positive light.
In a positive light,
Yeah.
in a fair way, not breaking the rules.
Yeah.
You just need to understand classification. You need to understand where the opportunities are with some sports and with some events, especially female female events with high levels of disability, not a lot of competitors.
Okay.
Let's target it. So very much a targeted approach.
Right, okay.
And given we were, as I said before, invested on medals, we were looking at athletes who could deliver multiple medals. So
that might cancel out a few that don't medal.
So, an athlete can deliver, 3 medals. You're being quite efficient with your financial resource.
Right.
Yes. Yeah.
Cool.
So you just see it was quite strategic.
Far out. I never knew that.
Good fun.
So after that role, you dabbled in the world of netball as the GM performance role with the tactics netball side. But due to COVID, it all got cut short. So how did that come up, and how did COVID affect the role in netball as a whole?
Yeah, it was. I left Paralympics New Zealand. I think it was back into 2019. I think it was back into 2019. When did COVID hit? 2020?
2020.
Yeah, back into December 2019, I started with netball, and look, that was purely because, one, I'd worked in the same office as netball for 10 years.
Okay.
So I sort of knew a lot of the people.
Right.
I knew the sport, but the other piece was as glamorous it may have sounded, and it was for a wee while. Travelling the world 3 months of a year, was starting to wear off.
Okay.
I just and I was travelling to Auckland every week for 7 years.
Right.
For 3 days a week. So it was starting to wear off. So the opportunity came up with netball. For me, going into any organisation, it's about, and I know it sounds like a cliche, but can you change it for the better? Can you take it on a direction that it's going to really succeed and do well and so, and I felt netball could. I felt the tactics hadn't won it.
Yeah.
Not one.
Okay.
A championship, even as their previous name, which I should know and I can't remember, but they've come close, but they haven't won. So that was a challenge for me coming from that performance environment with Paralympics. It was exciting for me. I knew they had a good roster, led by Jane Watson, and I felt that with some tweaks and some support to their coaching staff, that there was a real possibility of taking a national title. But by April, and after one game, which we took away to Blenheim, COVID hit.
Yeah.
And Jesus, within 4 weeks of that, I was ringing up sponsors, doing liquidation calls.
Oh my goodness!
So I come a full circle. I just take it on a roll, and I was making liquidation calls. And,
wow!
And everybody was going around me. I just knew I was going to be the last one, but I just had to keep making these phone calls. So, but in saying that, I say to people, I probably learned more in 4 months than I did in the previous 4 years with Paralympics New Zealand, because I probably just done my time with them. I was probably hanging on for the wrong reasons.
Right.
But I learned a hell of a lot in that time with the sport. I learned a lot about netball. I learned a lot about people.
Yep.
And I learned a lot about strategy as well. So, it was a very short period. Unfortunately, it didn't get to where we thought we might have been able to get it to, but a lot worse things happened to people during that period, didn't they? So,
it was pretty tough time.
Yeah.
But coming out of COVID, so May 2022, you were appointed as the CEO of Canterbury Rugby League. So we're sort of getting more recent times. So how did the role come about? Was it something you were really passionate about? Being that you'd been involved playing in Canterbury as a youngster. So, what was that journey getting into the role?
Yeah, I don't even know if I saw the role advertised. I think someone might have rung me to say, hey, look, have you seen this role advertised? So I had a look at it, and then I made a couple of phone calls, a few coffees later and an interview, and I guess I found myself in the role. Initially the chair at the time was Wally Wilson, and for those who know Wally, he's a rugby league man through and through. He wants to see the betterment of the game. I think we had very similar values in terms of, you put the work in and you get the outputs that you're looking for out. So I think we clicked really well. He was, he's a Kia, and that was a concern. But look, I was able to let that go. And I did remind him about that 19-year-old grand final a number of times. And I reminded him that I won more grand finals than him. And look, he came right.
He knew his place.
Yeah, he knew his place. Yeah, I think it was, fuck off. But no, Wally and I clicked really well.
Yeah.
And I felt, after a couple of coffees and some discussions, I felt, look, for me, going into any organisation, you need to know that you've got your board support, and you need to know that you're well in alignment with your chairman, because if you're not, it's never going to work.
Yep.
It's going to be a hard road. So I felt really fortunate that, and I didn't know, I had heard of Wally, I didn't know Wally. I felt really, I guess, fortunate that he was the chair at the time.
Yep.
And that, knowing his history, not just playing the game, but his mana in the game, that I felt confident that I was going into an organisation that, in terms of values and vision, was sound here.
Nice, very nice. So coming into the role, what were some of the challenges you faced, especially as people always say, grassroots is on the decline. So what did you, face when you first stepped into that role?
Oh, gee, there's a few, and I guess I need to put a caveat on this, because I don't want to sound like any disrespect to those before.
No, not at all.
Because, we need to remember that we were coming out of COVID.
coming out of COVID, yes.
So I guess I need to just caveat that piece. But look, there was some, I thought, some key challenges initially. I felt, so my first 30 days, I just got out and talked to people.
Okay.
People that I've known from the past, so I'm talking about the Frank Endicotts, the Phil Prescotts, the Jeff Whitakers, to people that were in the game now. And I really just needed to understand, what was happening, what were people thinking, what were they seeing, what were they feeling.
Yeah.
I guess I got a sense that our history had been almost lost.
Okay.
I felt that people that had done some really good work for our sport in the past had, for a better word, maybe forgotten.
Yeah.
And I think they felt that way as well.
Okay.
So I felt that there was a need to turn that around. That was probably one challenge. The other one was losing our identity as a Canterbury brand in that youth level. So back in 2009, New Zealand Rugby League, on instruction from Spark, I think it was at the time, had to go to a zonal model.
Okay.
What that meant was Canterbury youth didn't get the opportunity to play for Canterbury. They had to play through a new entity called Southern Zone.
Right.
And I don't think I understood the full extent of that until I went through review processes over the last couple of years with senior rep coaches, and they made it, there was a really common theme coming out that the boys and girls didn't really understand the value of the red and black, what they were playing for, because they hadn't done that in their life.
So it's just the Scorpions they were playing for?
They were playing for the Scorpions.
Right.
And they weren't putting the red and black on. They may have been for smaller tournaments, but not at national tournaments. Okay. So that was probably another challenge that we've been working through, and we're getting to the other side of that now, which I think is a really positive piece.
I think so.
And I think the other challenge was, it didn't appear we had supported our coaches in developing as much as we could have or should have been. So they were probably, we developed a whole new strategic plan, which is out there, and we worked through that with the clubs. But I think they were probably the key challenges.
Right.
So we've certainly, and you were at the grand final breakfast, so we're starting to bring some of those.
That was great.
Those people back that have done so much for our game, that have been part of our game in the past, and acknowledging them around special events.
Yes.
Whether that be the grand final breakfast, prize givings, and so forth. How do we give a bit back to them?
That was really cool.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
For what you've done for our sport. So that's probably the key in terms of the zonal model. We've now got an MOU with Southern Zone that will see our in a few weeks' time, our boys play for Canterbury at the National Youth Tournament.
Nice.
So that will be the first time in the red and black at a national tournament since 2009. And our girls will transition next year.
That's brilliant.
So we'll be back. And next year, we've got the National Youth Tournament in Christchurch.
Yes.
So that's the first time since 1993.
That's incredible.
So, we're
really cool.
another big piece of what we've been trying to do is around the profile and perception of our sport in Canterbury and demonstrate to the rest of New Zealand that actually Canterbury Rugby League is alive.
Yeah.
And actually we're going to be a force to reckon with in the future.
That's absolutely.
And we're serious about what we're doing. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's a perfect segue into asking, because we know Canterbury got relegated from, the top division last year, and we're fighting to get back up to the national competition and standard, so what's Canterbury Rugby League doing, or what have they done or changed in the off-season to ensure the Bulls, have every opportunity to climb back up that ladder?
Yeah, look, and that was as you can imagine, for a lot of people, and I feel for some of those previous Bulls, I feel for the coach at the time because, we, and when I say we, Canterbury Rugby League probably didn't support those coaches at the time as much as we could have, but it was. I guess it was at a point in time as where we were. You're on a bit of a journey, and having come into Canterbury Rugby League, and I've said this to many people, and it might sound disrespectful, because I'm all about representative football, but it wasn't something we could address straight away. There was a whole lot of other stuff we need to address before we got to that.
Yes.
So what are we doing? We've Jed Lowry stepped down last year. He did a magnificent job under really challenging circumstances.
Mm-hmm.
I guess we looked at our structures and in terms of coaching, trainers and so forth, and went through a recruitment process, and I guess we've restructured those support teams to those teams.
Okay.
I guess that's been the key piece to date. The Premiership and Championship are interesting competitions. They're tagged on to the end of the season. They're 5 or 6 games, so you're sort of in and out.
Yeah.
So much different from the times of the Barter Card Cup where you had access to your players all the season.
Right.
So a key part for us has been putting those structures in place initially. We'll do a debrief with the coaches, Smokey, who does the women's, and Walter at the end of the men's, and understand their experiences from this season, because they're first-time coaches this year, and understand what we need to keep, what we need to change, what we need to get rid of, and go again next year. Yeah. Right. We that's the big piece, is just continuing to do those reviews and get feedback from those coaches.
Okay, wicked. And so, I assume that the answer is obvious, but is it obviously your top goal to restore that pride in the Canterbury jersey after, so many great sides that have represented the region over the years? Like I've been really trying to bring back a lot of the memories of Canterbury Rugby League since I started up the podcast, and like that great 93 side, but you had the 1990 side knocked over Auckland in a big game, and then sides before that in 85, like that beat Auckland, I think, or had draws with them, or, is that the goal to be that proud Canterbury side?
Oh, most definitely. I think we've got to be, because if we're not, why do we exist?
Yeah.
Yes, we're here as a sport, and we're providing participation opportunities, and that's all well and good. It's great that, from a physical activity piece, but if Canterbury Rugby League isn't aspiring to be the best it can be and get to the top again, I'm not sure why we'd be here, to be honest.
Yeah.
I'm not sure why I would be here, I can tell you that. But, I, in saying all that, it's the landscape of that representative rugby league, is changing.
Yes.
Obviously, we've seen a lot of drift from young men and women going to Auckland to try and get in that Warriors pathway.
Yeah.
So they're going there. They're going to Australia. I guess for us, looking forward is if that's going to be what it is, how do we retain kids here? Do we look at as an example, and I say as an example, do we look at our own Harold Matthews team or something like that?
Yeah.
Or is there going to be an NRL team here that will just change the landscape of rugby league?
That will change things dramatically.
In Canterbury,
yeah.
in New Zealand.
That'd be unbelievable.
Right, as of today, there's a lot of balls up in the air, and
yeah.
Hopefully by the time that those 2 test matches are over, we'll have a lot more to work with.
Yeah. Well, speaking of NRL and clubs, I understand Canterbury Rugby League have NRL partnerships, one being the Canterbury Bulldogs. I know you're a big Bulldogs man. So what are the advantages of having these connections to the NRL? And, you've got the Warriors, is that an advantage, or is sending the kids off, or how does that work?
Yeah, look, our relationship with and partnership with the Bulldogs came after discussions with the Warriors. So
okay.
That avenue was explored and didn't eventuate. So the Bulldogs were keen. And a big part of our partnership is they come over, we have an academy, they deliver coach sessions, they deliver player development sessions. So that's the piece there. We've got some add-ons that we want to start sending some players over there to go into, might be a 1-week camp or so forth, and get coaches over. So that's the next step for us. That's probably the key around that partnership.
All right.
We've certainly, they've certainly supported us in terms of helping us understand their structures and their coaching systems.
Right.
So some of our coaches have had access to that as well through development opportunities. So I was never a Bulldogs man before we had the partnership. I need to make that clear. But it was, once again, it was a timing thing. They were in Christchurch a lot. A big part for them is that they're not taking kids out of school. So their philosophy is, we're not taking kids out of school to bring them over here.
Okay.
So they're coming here to support our coaches in terms of skill and strategy development with coaches and players. So the players can do all their schooling here. When they finish school, if they're ready or if they're good enough, then they can go over.
Okay.
But they certainly don't want to be taking kids out of school just to go and play rugby league, which is a philosophy that we like.
Yes.
Similar values, so we felt that was a good fit for us.
That's brilliant.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Okay, so, one thing I really admire about Canterbury Rugby League, which when I first met you, you showed me around Ngā Pūnawai and the new big sports complex out there. Yeah. And, you're making a big impact outside of rugby league with your swimming program and your concussion partnership with the Laura Ferguson Brain Injury Trust. So where did these ideas come from, and what are the positive outcomes we've seen from these initiatives?
Yeah, really, look, coming on board, it was probably another challenge. I guess I got a sense, and maybe it was because I was new, maybe it was because I was past Hornet, who knows? But I felt that there was an opportunity to have a better relationship with clubs.
Yeah.
I didn't feel that relationship was what it could be, or potentially what it should be. I felt like potentially it had been a top-down approach where Canterbury Rugby League would just tell people what to do, and that was it. And I felt, and it was something I learned from Wally. He said, you used to say to me regularly, Malcolm, we're a membership organisation. They need to have a voice. So we gave them a voice. I think we had about 8 streams for our strategic plan. Majority of people were coming from clubs, whether they be coaches, players, managers, but we also had referees and so forth. So our clubs had significant input into our strategic plan, and I've done a few of these strategic plans, and they're typically quite similar for sports, facilities, coaching, But it was really interesting. What came out of this piece was a real common theme was, yes, we want Canterbury Rugby League to lead and deliver rugby league in Canterbury. However, we want Canterbury Rugby League to be supporting our community outside rugby league as well, which was quite distinct and it was quite obvious. It was like, ooh, okay. And look, I know my predecessor, Dwayne Fife, had done some really good and cool work around COVID. And how Canterbury Rugby League supported the community then. So maybe it was a flow on from that. So there was no sort of direction in terms of what that could be. It was this is what we want Canterbury Rugby League to do. So we started we looked at a number of different areas, and it was probably once again a timing thing, because the strategic plan was basically signed off in the summer, and summer is when most of your drowning's taking place.
Right.
And when you look at the drowning statistics, you go to Water Safety New Zealand and you find that Māori and Pacifica are overrepresented in preventable drownings year on year, and nothing's being done about it. Given 85% of our membership is Māori or Pacifica, here was the opportunity. How could we do this? So just once again by chance, I tried to work with Water Safety New Zealand. It became obvious that avenue wasn't going to work. So I started working with, I got a random email from a foundation called Up Foundation, and I only had to read the first paragraph, and it said, we deliver free activity to people that wouldn't typically do this activity. And we're doing a swimming program with Te Atu Rugby League at the moment. I went, what?
What are the chances?
He said, give me a ring if you want.
Yeah.
And I picked up the phone. He said, mate, you're the quickest that's ever rung me. I said, mate, I've been trying to get this through Water Safety New Zealand, but having no luck. Within a day, I think he was down. We were meeting. We just clicked. His name's Kevin Sinnott, and we were going around the clubs, meeting with the junior delegates from all the clubs. He did a wonderful job because he had to work across 3 councils, so Waimakariri, Selwyn and Christchurch City Council in terms of pools. Then he had to work within Christchurch City Council across all their pools to lock in basically free swimming lessons for all 8-year-olds.
It's amazing.
Once a week during term 2 and term 3. So I think at the moment we've got about 150 kids in a pool each week.
Really?
Learning to swim.
That's fantastic.
And we can't measure the outcome of that, but we know what the stats are, and we know we've got these kids in the water. And these are kids that wouldn't normally be walking into a council swimming pool.
Yeah.
So we've sort of broken the ice on that. We've got the kids in the water. Our plan is to continue those 8-year-olds onto 9-year-olds next year. Yeah. And then bring through the next lot of 8-year-olds. You
don't know how many lives you potentially are changing and saving, by doing this. You never know.
We won't know, but I think we know we're doing something pretty cool.
You're doing something very proactive and positive, and that's massive.
And we've had a lot of media attention on it as well, which is always a positive to because part of our strategic plan is around profile and perception, and we often I talk to my team, and we can't control what happens in the NRL at 4 a.m. in the morning outside some bar, but we can control our own destiny. And if that's helping kids to learn skills outside of rugby league or with rugby league, that's got to be cool.
Yeah, man, absolutely. You're also bringing fun and joy into their life. Like as an 8-year-old kid, I love going to the pools. Who didn't? It was great,
And the interesting thing is that the councils, it's not just when they're there swimming, they're actually giving them free passes to go whenever they want.
That's amazing.
So they're getting a free pass to the pool as well. So
that's so good.
It's very cool. And the Laura Ferguson piece, that's the Brain Injury Trust. So,
yes.
That's really around concussion education. I believe our sport has got a long way to go with that.
Yes.
We can't be leaving kids on the field if we know they've had a head knock just because we want to win a game.
Yeah.
We've got to get past that. So we've got a lot of work to do with our coaches, our clubs, ourselves around that, because we've seen too many incidences, even over the past 6 months, of people losing their lives.
Yeah. Because
they either didn't go off the field, or they went back to the game before they should have.
Yeah.
And it just shouldn't happen. if we're being responsible adults and we're taking care of the kids that are playing the game.
Absolutely. I mean, dementia's rife with the elder statesmen of our sports now.
Exactly.
That's just what it is.
Yeah, and we've got a responsibility. We've got an opportunity and a responsibility to change the mindset of people around this. So our part with Laura Ferguson is we've got a policy in New Zealand Rugby League, have a policy that, if you get concussed, you stand down for 21 days and then you get checked by the doctor. Our concern is what happens in that 21 days.
Okay.
Who's monitoring what's going on?
Right.
So that's where our relationship is with Laura Ferguson. That's what they do. That's
Really?
their expertise.
Brilliant.
That's what they do. So we're very fortunate to have that relationship. It started around mid-season, so we haven't got full traction of it yet. As I say, we've got a lot of education to do. We're going to wheel out Laura Ferguson to our clubs and our people to help them better understand, how we manage this.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Very cool. Very cool. So is there anything Canterbury Rugby League is doing to improve the profile and perception of rugby league? Because this has been traditionally a rugby union stronghold, where rugby league players have been the thugs and rugby union players are the private school boys. Is there anything Canterbury's doing to, because St Thomas just won the national high school or college national tournament back to back.
They defended their title.
That's pretty amazing. Where's that come from?
Oh, look, I think first of all, congratulations to Andrew and his team, because they've done a magnificent job with that.
Absolutely.
And it's one thing to go and win a title, but to go back and defend it when you've got the target on your back and many of the rugby league fraternity will understand the type of teams they will be coming up against in the North Island.
Big scary teams.
Yeah. So for what Andrew and his team have done in terms of bringing this group of young men through is absolutely significant.
It's huge.
It is huge. So, God, we talk about profile. There's another piece, and to be honest, we haven't really done anything about that. That's the St Thomas of Canterbury job well done. But in terms of profile, look, for us, it's about telling really positive stories.
Yeah.
There's a lot of good shit happening out there. You've only got to turn on the news or read the newspaper. It's all bad news.
Of course.
we want to be telling good news.
Yeah.
We want to get people thinking positively about our game, understanding what's happening really cool, understanding what opportunities there might be for them to be in the game and get into the game. And that could be anything from a young boy or girl wanting to play the game to a retiree who wants to volunteer back to the game. That may not have had anything to do with rugby league. Our retirees, the volume is growing. We're getting an older population, so there's a lot of people out there with significant skill sets that knowledge that we can bring into our game.
Absolutely.
And give them a positive experience. So, and give them some purpose, because they don't want to be sitting at home, all the time. And there's a whole socialisation piece and feeling valued around that piece as well. But for us, it's around ensuring we've got some really cool stories to tell.
Yeah.
Celebrating our game.
Yeah. Celebrating
our people.
Yeah.
I think are key things, and continue telling that message.
Yep, I think that's beautiful. Beautiful. Right. So I think rugby league's definitely on the up in New Zealand as a whole. I think everyone would agree with that. The Warriors games are selling out. We've got a test match here in Christchurch next month.
2 test matches.
2 test matches, there we go. Would you say that rugby league is definitely becoming the sport Kiwis can participate in?
Oh, look, actually one of my biggest learnings coming into this role was how many closet rugby league people are out there.
Yeah, there's plenty, isn't there?
Look, I remember going into the role and being at the supermarket, and I'd get fathers that, I knew through my girls going to school and wanting to stop and talk to me about the NRL and what's Canterbury Rugby. And these were guys that would never own up that they were All Black supporters of rugby league, and they were bloody closets. They were watching NRL all the time. So it was a big learning for me, and I just, I think there's certainly been a massive swing towards. You've only got to read the New Zealand Herald this morning, right?
Yeah.
A fascinating article there around where rugby league could potentially be going in the future. I forgot the bloody question, mate.
Well, is it something that all Kiwis can participate in or get behind, or it's definitely, essentially, is rugby league becoming? Is it popular to like rugby league? Is it fashionable now?
I think
in New Zealand.
I think the discussion has now been opened up. People are actually talking positive about rugby league.
Yeah.
And people that would not normally talk about rugby league.
Changed.
And you know how that works. Once somebody starts talking about it and go, it's okay to talk about it, so let's talk about it.
Yeah.
I think we've got, obviously the Warriors to thank for that. They certainly had a good year last year, which was certainly got a lot of people on the bandwagon. The Kiwis won that test series, and won that final test match against the Aussies, giving them a pouncing. The Kiwi Ferns beat the Jillaroos.
Yeah.
Our female participation rates are skyrocketing. There's been, and probably the other sport isn't doing itself any favours at the moment.
No.
And we've certainly seen a lot of rugby players come over to rugby league, even in that, and I say in that later stage, but even that 19, 20, 21-year-old stage, they're coming over to play Premier Rugby League. They've had enough of rugby.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
I just, our numbers. I think our numbers of the last 3 years, we've got 1,000 new participants in our game in Canterbury.
Massive.
So
Yeah.
that sort of tells a story.
Awesome, man.
Yeah.
Awesome. So the future's looking very bright, and I just want to thank you for all the hard work you're doing for Canterbury Rugby League. It's amazing. I'm from the North Island, but I moved here, and I can feel and see the passion from yourself and from meeting all the players that I've interviewed. I just feel real connected to this area now. So I just, again, thank you for all the work you do.
No
it's
worries.
bloody fantastic.
No, we're one big family, I think, the red and black. So,
yeah, man.
We stick together.
Right, I want to finish with my fun questions that I ask everybody just quickly. I've got to do this. So the first question, who is the club that you support in the NRL?
I support the Bulldogs now.
Yeah. Was there any other clubs?
Oh, look, people will be disgusted with me. I've had many a team.
Yeah, you're as bad as I am. I've supported a few over the years. So who do you think is going to win the competition in 2024?
Bulldogs.
Oh, very good, very good. Okay, so what is your favourite TV show or series of all time?
Oh, mate, it would have to be... it'd have to be Starsky and Hutch.
Really? Yeah. I haven't had that answer before. That's a good one.
Mate, a lot of people won't remember Starsky and Hutch.
I think that most of the people who watch this would.
Okay, yeah, Starsky and Hutch would have to be. And the other one was Fonzie, whatever that was.
Oh, yes.
Fonzarello.
Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah. Oh, what the hell is the name of that show? I can't remember. Anyway, doesn't matter. Happy Days.
Happy Days.
Yeah.
Happy Days and Starsky and Hutch. Yeah.
Very good. Okay, last question, man. If you could only eat one meal for the rest of your life, what would it be?
Oh, mate, that's a very difficult one for me. It's a Thai meal. It's a Thai. I'm pretty basic, to be honest, but I love my Thai food. So.
Good old pad Thai, that'll do it?
Yeah, pad Thai. Oh, no, probably a Thai sort of stir fry.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very nice,
yeah.
Very nice. Well, thank you very much for coming on the podcast. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you on the show. I've been wanting to get this over the line for ages, so I'm glad we finally made it happen. And so everyone, thanks at home for watching. This has been Malcolm Humm. I've been your host, Dave, and we'll see you next time for Kickoff.
Full time.